1. In 2013, during the last couple months of my senior year in high school, my girlfriend at the time and I both had Disneyland annual passes. We went at least once every couple weeks because we didn't really have much in common, except for a mutual love of all things Disney. We broke up, but I'm calling her my girlfriend because it's easier to type. It was about 2 months before graduation, and my girl and I wanted to get those little engraved leather bracelets with our names on them, because that's what couples do. We picked the colors of the leather bracelets we wanted and walked up to the cashier, engraver, and his name was Dakota as well. My name is Dakota, if you didn't get that yet. My girlfriend said he looked like an older version of me, and I kinda shook it off, since it made me kinda jealous that she must have thought he was attractive. He saw me look oddly at him, and he said, "Oh, is your name Dakota too?" Before I could answer, he quickly said, "I'm just kidding. I'm you in the future." Now that I looked at his face and heard his voice, he did remind me of myself in a few ways. But I was annoyed that he was starting this conversation when I just wanted to buy these bracelets and go on more rides. I replied, "How can I know that for sure?" He told me 3 things. 1, my girlfriend and I were breaking up soon. 2, Doctor Who would become my favorite show. 3, I wouldn't like what I end up studying in college. My girlfriend assured him that we were getting married and that he made it awkward by saying all that. He chuckled and said, "Just wait and see." We continued with our purchase. We went on our day and surprisingly stayed together for another 6 to 7 weeks. We broke up a few days before graduation, and everything he told me, or I told myself, came true in the coming years. I never really thought about that moment until I realized it's rather common from the content of this subreddit. Unless this is where people make up stories for karma. Nonetheless, it was really weird, and I'm kinda afraid to apply at Disneyland. A couple friends work there and tried to get me to join them, because I might see myself, and that's a bit too weird for me. Edit. I text my ex-girlfriend, and she said that he told us that he's also dating a girl named Ashley, before we told him our names. And this really confuses me right now because I'm currently dating a girl named Ashley. Spelling the same way as my ex. Weird, right? 2. About 2 years ago, 3 friends and I had been hanging out. Caitlin was driving us all around in her car. We decided to go see a movie, which we were already late for, and we ended up sneaking in. After the movie was over, we walked outside and the entire complex was silent. It was around midnight when the movie got out though, so we didn't really think too much of it. We found this tucked away alley and sparked the blunt we had planned on smoking pre-movie. I'll take this time to say that we were all very avid smokers, the kind of people that just keep smoking, you know? What I'm trying to say is this smoke session was nice, but in no way did it affect our cognitive reasoning, or cause any of us hallucinations. And yes, it was definitely just weed in the shell. So we get towards the end of the blunt, when I peek my head around the corner and see a security guard walking. I quickly let everybody know and we exit the alleyway. The security guard immediately calls out to us, which prompts us to start running across the parking lot and back to our car. We hop in and start to leave. The exit to the cinema and surrounding shopping area was fairly long with a cement divider running down the middle of the whole thing. So as we were leaving, we could clearly see the cop entering, and as we drove up and out, 2 of us watched him drive down and then quickly flip around the divider and come back towards the exit towards us. This obviously led to panicked warnings about the officer, and the inevitability of the situation set in. We all saw the cop pull out of the cinema with his lights on. That's not something mistaken easily. I was holding the end of the blunt, which I promptly popped into my mouth and chewed with a disgusted grimace on my face. I absolutely hate tasting weed, and I can count on a partially amputated hand how many times I've willingly done it. Anyways, the cop has pulled us over. There's definitely at least a little more weed in the car, and we're kinda anxious like all stoners getting pulled over. And then in the next second, the next fucking breath, we were all alone on the shoulder of that road. When the cop pulled up, his bright-ass lights flooded our back window and filled the car. And then it just didn't. We turned our heads to look out the back of the car, and the cop wasn't there. He wasn't anywhere, I'm absolutely certain, as is everybody else in the car, that there's no way the cop left in front of us. We were on a multiple-lane road, so to do a U-turn across traffic would have taken more than 1 second. Besides, his lights would have started casting different patterns as he pulled off. As it was, those lights just vanished. To this day, none of us has any explanation at all. I think I am the only one that still thinks about it so heavily, though. I did talk to Heather about it yesterday, and she remembers, but she didn't seem too impressed or interested in my glitch theory. Although she did admit that there could have been a timeline where we got pulled over, and a timeline where we didn't. 3. This happened to me about 13 years ago. At the time, I chalked it up to ghost, maybe? Despite it not fitting other more paranormal experiences I had at other places. It's pretty darn glitchy. Back then, I worked the early morning 6 a.m. shift at my job. I was getting ready in the bedroom when I heard the sound of keys falling on a carpeted floor in the living room. I hadn't been in the living room at that point yet, and as the only person awake, with no pets in the house, neither had anyone else. I chalked it up to maybe it was something else, and continued getting ready. When I went to the living room to get my things together to leave, my keys were not on the table that I always left them on. That's weird. I'm like clockwork when I put stuff down on coming home. Purse goes on the table, shoes go by the couch, keys go in the middle of the table. So it's weird they fell, but I heard them fall and they can't have gone far from the table. I look under the table, they're not there. I look in a ridiculously large radius to the table. They're not there. I look everywhere carpeted in the living room. Not there. In purse, in pockets, on every table, nope, nope, nope. Finally, I go kiss my husband goodbye, who's still asleep, and say, I'm taking your keys, I can't find mine anywhere, and I'm going to be late. He mutters some sleep version of, okay, and I take his keys. 4 hours later on my break, I call him, explaining that I took his keys to a much more awake person, since I couldn't find mine. I asked if I needed to leave work early to drive him anywhere, or did he find my keys? Oh yeah, they were on your side of the bed. My side of the bed? Like on the floor? No, they were on the bed on top of the covers. I never saw my keys that morning, and only returned to the bedroom from the living room after giving up on my key search, and having his keys in hand while kissing him goodbye. I pondered so hard if I could have walked around with them in my hand for 15 minutes, put them in bed and never noticed or heard them jingle. I'm certain I didn't. It was 5:30 a.m., but I was awake and aware. 4. It was about 9:08 a.m. on September 22nd, 2016. I was driving my 18-year-old daughter to a doctor appointment in Atlanta, concerning a surgery she would soon need. We got on the I-75 south from the exit off our street in Kennesaw, Georgia, and I commented that rush hour traffic had died down early. We drove past 2 exits and saw traffic slow to about 35 miles per hour. I looked a short distance ahead and saw several sets of blue lights in the inside median, and I exclaimed that our ride would now take twice as long. My daughter looked ahead and said there must be 4 or more cop cars, so it must be a wreck rather than a stalled car. Some tractor trailers obscured our view for almost a minute as we drove, by which time we reached a place where we had seen the blue lights. To our surprise, the area was clear. No cop cars, no accident residue, no tow trucks, nothing. I asked my daughter what happened to the wreck, and she shrugged and answered, I have no idea. They couldn't have cleared it up that quickly, could they? I said it was weird and kept driving. About 7 miles further south, we again saw several sets of blue lights on the inner median. As we drove past them, we could see 3 cars that had crashed into each other, surrounded by cop cars. I looked at my daughter and asked, Did we imagine this wreck miles before, or what? We surely couldn't have seen it from that far away. She said that was the weirdest thing she had ever seen. We completed the rest of our 54-mile round trip to her doctor without further incident. I have to wonder if anyone else has experienced anything like this. 5. A few months ago I experienced a glitch along with my buddy. He posted the story of it here a couple hours ago. I don't use Reddit much, but he showed me the post, and what a coincidence that he posted about it on the same day that everything changed for me. As stated, we have a theory that glitches are more likely to occur or be observed by someone if they continue to acknowledge or talk about their existence or instances. We've been reading this thread for quite a while and talking about them for almost as long, so naturally the universe had to go and fuck with me. Here we go. Now this story is virtually impossible to tell without using names, so I've changed them to remain lawful within the subreddit rules. Here is the backstory, to give you guys some insight as to why this fucked me up so bad. I work for an RTA, Regional Transportation Authority, that is in charge of providing fixed route and door-to-door bus service for the residents of the entire county, as well as campus busing for the nearby university. I'm a maintenance worker, not a mechanic, and most of my job is outside. Being that I live in the northern United States, this means that work is absolutely formidable for about 4 months of the year, when winter hits. When I first started, I had joined a crew that was 3 people strong. Levi was the head of the crew, followed by John and Ralph. As the months went by and the cold set in and passed, members of the crew began to leave. First Ralph, who had finally found a gig as a horse rancher, which was his dream. Then John, who wanted to focus on finishing his last semester. And finally, Levi, who joined the Air Force and headed off for his basic training. And then there was one. I worked alone for about a month, which I'm sure you could agree was even worse than when it was cold out, because I had to go through 60+ full-sized buses every single weeknight by myself. The mechanics even felt bad for me and sent their idiot journeyman out to help me. Regardless, after that month I was set on finding a new job when I was brought a new trainee, a naturalized citizen who moved here 10 years ago from Nigeria. Now, he didn't work out at all and left, but I did end up gaining more workers. I got 3 campus drivers for the summer named Tom, Jake, and Norman, and then my friend Joe that I've known since middle school also joined the force. Listen up, because this is the important part. Joe's dad was going through hospice care toward the end of the semester, and unfortunately, didn't make it to see his son make it through his second to last semester at the university. His dad was the main income for the family, even through his disability and hospitalization, and with him gone, I needed to help Joe find a job, so I recommended that he join my crew. After all, just a month prior we had gotten a $2 pay increase, and with the hours we were working, it would be enough to help his mother deal with the loss and give some support to keep the house and uphold the bills from month to month. This was months and months ago, and Joe has worked with me ever since. He saw Tom, Jake, and Norman all leave, and helped me train Kevin and Ted that we got toward the end of the summer, and now April and Jorge, who just started about 2 weeks ago. Here's the feature presentation. Last night, for whatever reason, I could barely sleep. I just recently went full-time at the RTA and the hours were really starting to get to me. It's a 5-day-a-week schedule where I work 3 p.m. to 12 a.m., and I'm usually still awake by the time I get home. So I got my measly 4 hours and woke up around noon to get myself up and run an errand or 2 before work. I finished what I needed to do and threw my uniform on before heading out for work, but for whatever reason, my 1-year pin was nowhere to be found. Figuring it just fell off, and that if I looked for it I'd be late, I left it anyway. I lived just 15 minutes from work, and left about half an hour before the start of my shift, because I had to talk to the department head about a few things. I take the interstate to get there, and on my way I noticed something odd. One of the speed limit signs had the numbers switched. Instead of saying 65 miles per hour, it said 56. I wrote this off as something I may just have thought I saw with a passing glance, since I know the speed limit's there and back by now. Then my radio cut out, which isn't too uncommon, since my head unit is 4 years old and the Bluetooth isn't great. When it came back on, however, it had changed to track 056, which didn't seem to be playing. When I looked at my phone to solve the issue, I noticed that it was a song Joe and I had played in marching band our senior year of high school, and it was stuck inaudibly at 56 seconds. Starting to freak out, I decided not to listen to music the rest of the way to work, which was a good thing, because in another mile or so I happened upon a near standstill traffic, just 2 miles from my exit. The most horrifying part of this is that when I finally made it to see what had caused the traffic, a chill ran down my spine as I realized it was a nearly identical crash to one I had driven past a few months prior. A black Mitsubishi-looking car had driven off the road at a high enough speed to run straight through at least 50 feet of fence posts before coming to a stop, with the cable fence cut nearly entirely through the cab of the vehicle. I noticed a similar man being given a sobriety test by a similar state patrolman. The traffic picked up and I made it to my exit. Checking the time, I see it's 2:56, 4 minutes to get to work. I hammered on the throttle the whole way there, and was still late, but noticed that Joe's car wasn't parked in its usual spot. When I went to confront our foreman Dominic about it, he responded with, "Who's Joe? You mean John?" Surely I thought he's just fucking with me since that's something he loved to do. But before I could ask him again, he had already interjected with a, "Why are you here so early?" Looking at the clock behind him in his office and seeing that I was now 10 minutes late, I answer, "I'm full time, so I get here at 3. Before I could continue, Dominic flashed me the most confused look I've ever seen from him, before saying, "Look, I know you want the promotion, and I've been talking to Mike about it, but you can't just show up at 3 to be full-time." As he said that, John came around the corner, dressed head to toe in his uniform with a fuel log clipboard, and said hi to me as if he hadn't quit working there like 10 months ago. I was seriously confused now, and I asked Dominic what John was doing there. His answer, he works here? "And what about Joe?" "Who is that? Why do you keep asking?" I walked back downstairs and sit in my car for the next 45 minutes, my head spinning. As the other crew members started to arrive, Ted pulled in first, then Kevin, and finally Avril and Jorge. When I asked them about Joe, none of them had a clue what I was talking about. Feeling uneasy, I clocked in and sat in the bathroom for about half an hour, before coming to the conclusion that I somehow ended up in a different reality, where Joe never worked at the RTA, and John ended up staying and getting the full-time promotion instead of me. I texted Joe tonight, and he told me he was busy at work. I asked where that was, but he didn't answer. I am beyond freaked out. I don't know what to do. Edit. I didn't understand the significance of 56 before I just wrote all this down, and tried to read it again and make sense of it. I believe that 5/6, or May 6th, may have been Joe's first day on the job, but seeing as how all recollection and record of him ever working there no longer exists, I could be wrong and not know it. Edit 2, from comments. Well, I just slept for about 11 hours, so that's always a plus. Waking up this morning, things feel how they did before. Except going back through text messages and voicemails from Joe, I still have nothing from him about work. We were both full-time in the old reality, and it was pretty much all we ever talked about, aside from the usual bro stuff like cars and guns and whatever else. The weirdest part about this is that Joe convinced me, at work over the summer, to buy a gun, a muzzle loader for hunting, and I still have it. So who convinced me to buy it in this reality? Does this weapon hold some sort of significance? Or is it some sort of key to get back? Edit 3, from comments. I found something at work today that really fucked me up. In one of the rooms we hardly use except to turn the diesel pumps on at the beginning of the shift, I saw a shirt sticking out from behind a barrel of additive, Joe's shirt. This normally wouldn't bother me because there could have been another Joe that worked here before. But two things make that impossible. One, all uniforms get sent back to the uniform provider when someone leaves. And two, our shirts have our last names around the collar. Joe's last name is on this shirt. No way this could be a prank. Last I knew, John moved to North Carolina after graduating and turned his uniforms back in. Edit 4 from comments. Yes, hi everyone. I've been pretty busy losing my mind lately and haven't had much time in dealing with all my other responsibilities to come back and update you all on what's happened since. First, I can't find the shirt anymore. I put it back where I found it, and the next day I was going to take your advice and confront someone higher up about it, to see what it was all about. Nothing. Only a picture to prove its existence. Second, I talked to John and Kevin at work. Ted's been out sick for the past few days. Really, we just think, since it's been cold, that he doesn't want to come in because he's an old fart and the weather messes with his combat injury. And I even got the chance to talk to Joe after he finally texted me back. John is from North Carolina, as before, and graduated in May as before, but never quit and never moved back home. John says he's met Joe before, because I brought both of them to the local hookah bar after work one night over the summer. Other than that, John knows nothing of Joe. Kevin, who used to be sort of an ass to me whenever Joe was around, provided more chilling information. He said I haven't talked about Joe at work for quite some time, and John verified this, saying that the last he heard about him was around a week after our trip to the hookah bar, when I told them that Joe's mom kicked me out of their house after finding out we'd gone, or something along those lines. Joe seemed to be just as confused as I was, but for different reasons. More along the lines of why I might be texting him all of a sudden. Maybe we haven't talked in a few months in this timeline, but I swear just a few days ago we went to B-dubs for some wings with his girlfriend after work. I explained to him the trippy shit that I just went through, and he immediately went to work looking into it. Great idea it was bringing it up to him, someone who tends to overdo it on things when it comes to obsessiveness. All he's talking about anymore is glitches, but it's not helping. I also asked him about the gun, and the worst part of it is he says he had no idea I bought one, and that we should go shooting sometime now that I have a gun. Some things that are creepy about that. I have never been to a range. I have an ammo box that's supposed to hold 15 bullets for my gun, and 13 of them are missing. In my previous timeline, I have gone shooting with Joe about 5 or 6 times. It appears that in this timeline I haven't gone at all. But I'm still down the ammo. I'm not sure how old Joe's dad was when he died, but I'll ask. And as far as dimensional jumping goes, I feel that may be more plausible than some sort of psychotic break due to my work conditions. Ever since I was legally allowed to work, I have been working the night shift, and getting little bits of sleep here and there is just how I function. I'll keep you updated. At my job, we work a rotating schedule on Sundays, to where one person comes in for about an hour at any point during the day. And it just so happens to be my week to do it. I will see if I can figure anything out while I'm there alone. Edit 5 from comments. Hi everyone. Just got done at work, and I have to say, I'm more confused than ever right now. Part of my job entails washing the buses in an automated wash spray. You drive the bus up to the first set of sprayers, and a red light comes on to let you know that it's getting ready, and then the jets fire up, and the light turns green along with another set of lights at the end of the bay after the rinse arches. I got through about half of my buses today, only 3 or so. Sundays are typically real easy. And as I was going through the wash bay, the light at the end began to flash yellow. Something I've never seen before. But at this point my bus, an Orion 7 Next Gen, encountered a transmission problem and wouldn't move or shift out of neutral. Dominic has told us before that regardless of what happens or where the bus is, to shut it off, wait a few seconds for the trans to reset itself, and then turn it back on. I thought for a second whether or not I should do this because for some reason a few of the buses in our fleet have this odd feature that causes the door to act sporadically when the ignition is first shut off. And as I was right in between 2 high-pressure detergent sprayers, once I decided to do it instead of being stuck in there for the next 24 hours, I was almost immediately drenched from head to toe with soapy water, but the transmission wouldn't budge. The transmissions look similar in all of the buses, and typically when there's a check translate, the left side, or select, goes dark and the right, or monitor, stays on whatever gear the bus was in last. You'll never guess what the transmission read the second time I turned it back on. Not 56, but 65. After a few more tries, I got the bus to move, and I had no more problems for the rest of the shift. Now, I would have taken pictures of all of this for you, but we have cameras on all of the buses, as well as a strict no texting policy, so I most likely would have gotten canned. But when I went to clock out and put my uniform back on the community rack, I realized that Joe's name was back where it was before, and all of his uniforms were hung where they should have been. Just to be sure, I checked the schedule on the board. Joe's name is now where John's was that first day. I must have come back, I guess. I have no idea how. All of my texts are back. My pay stubs are showing current, and I'm on my way to the lake to meet Joe and tell him everything I've just been through. Thank you all for helping me through the longest glitch of my life. Edit 6 from comments. Joe says that in this reality I was acting real strange at work, sort of on edge and not talking much, aside from orchestrating how the newer people are working. The worst part? He's talking about glitches non-stop in this reality too, and like I said, me and my other buddy think that talking about them makes them more likely to happen. Stay tuned for more. Edit 7, when I met with Joe earlier, we confirmed that his start date was May 6th or 5/6 this past year. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Glitch in the Matrix Stories, number 23. Surprise glitch video for you today? Or maybe Hellfreezer from Earth 2 is actually just on his regular schedule and put out this video as normal, and somehow it crossed the internet barrier between dimensions. We'll never really know, I suppose. Well, I'd just like to say thank you very much to everyone who allowed me to use their stories in this video. And with that, I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.